Alhamdulillah, Prof. Geru, Ahmad Lubis, and Prof. Nizam, and all participants Islamic Economic Training Camp. This is the last session for our Islamic Economic Training Camp 2023, and the topics that will be delivered for this morning, I think is very important for us to give us perspective on Islamic economic, how it is developed, how it is being developed, and what is the expectations in the development of Islamic economic. So with us we have Professor Dr. Muhammad Aslam Hanif. Everybody knows our guru. Professor Aslam is the active in the Department of Economics, International Islamic University Malaysia, and currently he is the Director in Academic Development Division, International Institute for Islamic Thought, IIUM Southeast Asia. The topic that will be discussed in this morning is about the importance of research, the IOK agenda, Islamization of Knowledge agenda, and the need for critical reviews in readers. So I believe if you read all these titles, it gives us a message that there are some things that Prof. Aslam wants to emphasize to us in the development or in the IOK agenda, so that we can, I hope everybody can put attention and will listen, and later on we will interact in the discussion with Prof. Aslam. With that, I would like to invite Professor Muhammad Aslam Hanif to deliver his talk.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi. Thank you very much, Hafaz, Jamil, Dr. Nizam, Lubis, Bayru, Asmi, and all participants of the training camp. Firstly, I'm very happy to be able to join you in the second camp. We had a very successful camp 5 years ago in KL. And because of various reasons, including the 2-year COVID restrictions, we were not able to continue with this camp. So alhamdulillah, we are able to do the second camp after a 5-year break. And judging from the first camp, it was very successful. In fact, I was just told just now that the WhatsApp group that was created in that first camp is still active. Okay, so I really hope that these participants will also keep in touch with each other. And maybe one of the agenda will be the research agenda that you have, maybe be discussing with your colleagues. All right. What I want to focus on, of course, I'm wearing the triple IT jacket this morning, and therefore I want to focus on the IOK agenda. And as you will see later, this IOK has had evolution over the years. We have always been saying Islamization of knowledge, but there's also a term that is now officially used by triple IT. It is integration of knowledge. So both are IOK. So we need to maybe make a little bit of clarification about what this IOK agenda is all about. But more importantly, why, as the next generation of Islamic economists, why you need to incorporate this agenda in your work as Islamic economists. So I hope that with this very brief presentation, you will get a better idea of what the IOK agenda is, and make it part of your own individual academic pursuit in whatever topic or even faculty or kuliah, your for specific areas, bring this IoT agenda in. Now, I also want to stress something which is at the end, the critical reviews and readers. Something which I think not enough emphasis has been given. Although it is in the original IOK work plan that Almarhum Ismail Faruqi wrote, there was this discussion about the need to have critical reviews and readers. Right? And we'll come to that a bit later. So let's move. Very brief outline. I will try to keep presentation less than 1 hour, maybe 45 minutes, and I hope to have much more time for interaction. Just a brief background, and then we will talk about IOK agenda, and then how I hope it will be incorporated into your research. For those of you who prepare presentations that don't have IOK input, then you are in trouble. Right? No, I'm just kidding. I know you have been working very hard with your group with the proposal, but this is something additional that maybe you can think about it for the longer period. Okay, now, everybody I think will agree. One way for us to show that we understand something, that we have mastered something, is to have the output, right? We cannot say that we know that we have knowledge of something without really being able to show it. And when do you show it? Right? It's like your PhD. Dr. Asmi had a very interesting presentation yesterday. You can, have lots of ideas and knowledge, but at the end of the day, what you need to have is your PhD thesis. Right? So your idea may be very, very ambitious, and you want to solve all the problems in the economy and society, but the output is the PhD. Along the way, you may have other output, including critical reviews. Right? But the PhD is your output that shows that you have acquired, you have been able to understand what it is that you are doing in the form of that thesis. Right? So, what is the state of research and publications in the world? Again, I think everybody will agree, right? Everybody says this. Islam is a religion based on knowledge. Right? We always emphasize this in IIUM. The 5 verses of Surah Al-Alaq are our basis in the university. Right? Knowledge is emphasized. Verses of Al-Quran, Hadith are always quoted. Muslim civilization has always been presented as a knowledge-based civilization. We of economic thought, there is a period called the Great Gap. Some of you may have heard this. When you read history of economic thought written by Western scholars, they will jump from, let's say, 500 AD, they will jump all the way to 1100 or 1200 with Thomas Aquinas. Right? In between, the great gap, big gap. Why? Because actually the Muslim world. In fact, even when Thomas Aquinas wrote his works, the Muslim world was still the leader of discourse in all branches of knowledge. So for about 1,000 years, we were the leaders. Dr. Hikmatullah, who was with our many more. So this is an important start. Why, when we talk about the IOK agenda, it is based on this premise that in order for us to talk about the reform that we need in our societies, in our civilization, knowledge is a very, very central part of it. There is this study which I'm taking from Wajdi Sawahel, who quotes from somebody called Yusuf Iqbal in September 2022, where he says that Muslim majority countries only publish about 5% of all Web of Science papers globally. So Muslims make up about 22% of the world population, and yet when it comes to publications in the form of journal articles, etc., 5%. Our percentage of global trade is very low. Similarly, when it comes to knowledge, we have a great history. We claim we are a civilization based on knowledge, and yet today we are way behind. And then from contributions to global science of the highest publishing science systems, the 15 Muslim majority countries are still modest, but showing an increasing trend. And I think that's IOK together. It's part of that intellectual, if I use the word renaissance, then people will go back to Western civilization and say, why are we using this? But this interest that has been gaining more and more momentum in the Muslim world, you can see it from the fact that the trends of publication are increasing. And in a cycle for 30 years, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, Saudi Arabia, those countries are the ones that are actually contributing the most in the literature that has been written over the last 30 years. Alright, so research is for knowledge, knowledge is for action, and action is for, I'm using the term development because many of us are maybe from economics. Yeah? So we need the research that we do to be making an impact in society, a positive impact. Yeah? Sometimes you can have development. Unfortunately, the development impact is negative. So when we talk about development, we are talking about the positive impact that it makes to society. And of course, the very famous saying about the Prophet, I seek protection against which does not benefit, and an action which is not elevated. So therefore, research and publication, whatever you are doing, there must be an impact. Now, when I say this, I myself, maybe Dr. Hafaz also, now I'm not too sure, maybe he has. We are in the category of what Dr. Asmi said yesterday. We like to focus on the more philosophical and conceptual topics. That is also important. It's not that it's not important. It has a role to play in developing the discipline. And developing discipline is part of what will also have benefit to society. Many of you may be doing research which is directly related to programs that are going to have social impact directly. I think there were, as Peter was telling, 60% of all your proposals are in microfinance, social finance, is that right? So these are projects that have direct impact to society. That's wonderful. Okay? Right? The important thing is, whatever you are doing needs to come out in the form of either paper, thesis, book, report, a policy paper. Right? And then some of you may add humanity as a whole. Okay? So we should always look at the Muslim Ummah and Islamic civilization as part of human civilization. Very often we tend to want to exclude Islamic economics as if there is something very unique about it. Yes, it has unique features. It has the foundations that are unique to us, but it has to serve humanity. You cannot talk about Islamic banking finance, which is only meant for Muslims. It makes no sense in the world today. So whatever you are trying to develop, Andy was talking about Islamic banking, whatever alternative you want to give to the current Islamic banking, it must be workable for everybody in society. it would not make sense to talk about something only for Muslims and to exclude Muslims from the bigger system. It has to be something meant for everyone. Now, when we talk about the IOK agenda, then it must reflect what has been termed in the literature the Tawhidi framework. And this, in very simple ways, it means when we are developing our research, when we are writing our papers or our thesis, if possible, we must try to utilize the two sources of knowledge. On the one hand, you have revelation. On the other hand, you have the universe. Right? So, Sheikh Taha al-Mato, he talked about the two books. One is the sources give you inputs to develop knowledge. So, what makes IOK approach, or I could even say the Islamic approach to knowledge and all the disciplines, basically has taken away the revelation part or the reference to religion, and therefore the science that has been produced has been one that has no place for revelation or for the sake. Therefore, in IOK about how to do thesis was very much focused on the conventional methods that we use and how you are supposed to do. We would need to have maybe a complementary presentation on how to deal with revelation in developing your proposals, your research proposals, and your thesis. And that is not that easy. Okay? Maybe we'll have a follow-up program later. And that's what the IOK agenda is all about, right now. So with that very, very brief state of research, let me move to the second one. It's a brief note on IOK. Actually, there should be a big O rather than small, but you know, right? Integration. Both use IOK as its acronym. It's been put forward as Islamization of knowledge. Since easily the IIUM project is concerned, the official publication came out. Project is concerned, the official publication came out in 1982. A small booklet, the Islamization work plan, that was published jointly by IIUM and I forget the institution in Pakistan, but original little booklet, for those of you who have it, brown cover, the Islamization of knowledge work plan. So Islamization of knowledge since the 70s, and about 10 years ago, officially IIUM decided to use the term integration of Dr. Fatim Al-Dawi a few days ago. There was a question asked about what the difference between Islamization and integration, and he basically said that the two are not really separate. Okay? And I will try to show it a bit later in some diagrams. They are interrelated and intertwined. And you need to see it as interrelated and intertwined. Let me give you a very simple example. If you want to replace, let's say, interest with something else, right? When you critically evaluate, he was telling me about theory of interest. Yeah? Dr. Hafaz, sorry. Somebody, a student, was doing work on theory of interest. So if you want to rebut this theory of interest and have a replacement, what is it that you need to refer to? You go back to your revelation. Right? So this idea of your discourse on how to replace interest rate in the system, you cannot separate the two. While you are trying to Islamize, you are also integrating from your revelation. You are Islamizing through we'll hopefully see it a bit later, right? So they are both interconnected. Don't think that they are separate. What is your reference point? So you must be clear. So when we say integration of knowledge, it must be clear. Integration, both integration and harmonization, the reasons are about the same. It's very politically sensitive. We continue to use the word Islamization, especially over the last 20 years. There have been so many criticisms towards it. And the IOK agenda has also evolved over the decades. Many of the criticisms have been incorporated into one of the reasons why the IOK agenda is still very, very alive today. Because they opened up debate, they are incorporated into the modifications that they put forward. It kind of reached a plateau in the 1990s. Right? So it's called Islamic studies or Sharia, something like that. Could be madrasa, but there are even universities. Okay, now it's interesting. Ar-Raniry has a more tradition, right? But in order to get upgraded to a university, one of the conditions is you need to have many faculties, and therefore you need to also get staff to teach in the faculties, right? So in the idea of UIM is already this idea of critical interaction. Because how can you have, I was told there was even, was it Shahpala or Ar-Raniry? We passed by Faculty of Physics. Yeah? From when I arrived, we go to the campus, Faculty of Physics. And I was saying, Ar-Raniry has a Faculty of Physics. So how do you develop physics in Ar-Raniry without critical interaction? Are you going to be able to just look at the Quran and Sunnah and develop a faculty of physics? I would think it would be impossible. Right? So critical interaction is acceptable. Now, I will just make one more comment on why I think critical interaction is very, very important. I think it is actually the Islamic approach. If you look at the Quran talks about the previous people, talks about the previous religions, talks about the previous books. Right? Some of those things we accepted, some of those things we rejected, and some of these things we modified. You look at the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, similar things. Certain practices were accepted, certain practices were modified. Certain practices were rejected. You look at Muslim civilization. I mentioned when they went to when they came across Greek civilization, some of the ideas they translated into Arabic, but some of the works they didn't translate, especially the works relating to the theme that we are part of human civilization, but at the same time making sure the foundations are our foundations. I think that's the lesson that at least I would like to put forward. Now this is a task for academics. And I think everybody in this graduates, all the others are either masters or PhD students. And of course some of the lecturers. So the IOK agenda is actually for academics, for graduate students maybe. Okay. Why? Because as far as the undergraduate is concerned, don't bog them down with you need to master this and that. It's not for undergraduate students. Undergraduate student just wants to know, first degree, and then they want to go and maybe get a job, etc. So we have to produce the output that we are going to use in the classroom for them. So the task is for us. Right? And I'm saying us, everybody in this room. This is a book. Most of my comments on the next section come from this book. So please, if you are interested, please take a look. Why do we need IOK? Anyone except Amrin and Bushra and Afa who were in the class. Why do we need IOK? Anyone?
Because there is a problem of the knowledge from the West.
To get better, okay, to get better Muslims. Anyone else? Why do we need IOK? Why do we need Islamic banking and finance?
So we can live in Islamic way.
To be in line with our religion. Anything else? Anyone else? That's another reason why. Okay, the condition of the Muslims, right? Even, and I put it as a, even understanding our own religion, we are not really understanding it correctly. At least this is what, from the proponents of IOK, Professor Alatas especially, we don't even understand what our religion is. Religion has been limited to just the 5 pillars of Islam. There's no connection to economics, there's no connection to any other aspect of life. I remember when I was in school, my Form 6 school teacher was talking about economics. He says, when you're in your day life, make sure you are the best businessman. Do whatever it takes to make profit. At night, ask God to forgive you. Okay? So that is not our meaning of what we want to do in Islamic economics. Okay? We want to make sure even the way we do our economics would not require us to ask for forgiveness. Although, even the Prophet, his name, used to seek Allah's forgiveness, so it's always good to seek forgiveness, but not because you do the sins every day and then ask forgiveness at night. So the state of our Muslim Ummah requires us to have reforms, right? And Marhum Ismail Faruqi used the term the malaise of the Ummah. This great malaise, just Google and get the acronyms, the synonyms for malaise. Yeah? And this is the point that I think some of you mentioned. The knowledge and disciplines that we teach, even in our own universities, in Muslim countries, these are coming from basically Western Europe, especially the social sciences and human sciences. These were disciplines that were born between the 18th and maybe 20th century in the West. And we just basically imported these disciplines into our local universities, and we teach them. We use the American textbooks or the British textbooks as is. Right? So yesterday there was a question about the agent that we use in economics teaching. That's because we use that textbook. And the textbook says this is the economic method. This is the characteristics of the economy. Is that correct for Muslims? No. We have to look at our own worldview. As I mentioned this, inshallah, these disciplines are product of history and experience of Western Europe, and Professor Alatas called this a manifestation of corruption of knowledge. Right? In other words, we look at knowledge and the different disciplines from the lens of the Western worldview. And that Western worldview has undergone what Andy said, secularization, the materialism that is part and parcel of their philosophy that underlies their disciplines. And this cannot be accepted from an Islamic point. So we need critical interaction. In most Muslim countries, before that, the IOK agenda sees the problem and the solution in the area of knowledge and education. Okay? I mentioned about the Islamic resurgence from the late 60s and even 70s, 80s. Many Muslim organizations were also talking about the need for reforms. Right? But some of these groups, they talked about the political damage. just have an Islamic state or replace the leader and your problems will be solved. Okay? Now those in the IOK agenda, they don't see that as the way to solve your problem, because even if you replace the leader and you replace the political system, but they are dealing with an education system, a social system that is the same as the source of the problem. So if you have a leader, the leader needs to make reforms in the education system and in the knowledge that is being transmitted. Why does it exist? They explain that in all Muslim countries, and I'm sure without exception, you will have a dual education system. Right? You have the national education system that will be modeled after the British or the Dutch or the French, maybe the Spanish, maybe the German in very, very few cases. It's modeled after that system. Producing the engineers, the doctors, the lawyers, the leaders of the country. And then you will have the traditional Islamic system, madrasah or the pasantren or the pondok, that will produce those who become Quran teachers, who become the imam, who become... That is what we will have in all Muslim countries. So this, according to the IOK proponents, is one of the reasons why we have this dichotomy. What we need to do, and we cannot have this system continue because they are producing very different graduates for different careers. A national education system that teaches the modern subjects, okay, and an Islamic traditional education system that teaches the Quran, Hadith, Fiqh, Arabic, and even that I must add on in a very limited way. They teach the Quran, they teach maybe Fiqh, but the Fiqh is very narrow Fiqh. Probably in one particular school, and then one of the teachers of that school. They will not go beyond that in most cases. So it does not represent Islamic education. Okay? The traditional Islamic education system does not represent the Islamic education as it's supposed to be. I mean, how do you explain our great scholars of the past? They were the Qadi at the same time, they were the people leading in scientific discovery. We had that kind of scholarship. Today, this is not possible. And I think yesterday we also had some mentioning about this. In the case of Islamic banking finance, there is an overly fiqh orientation. Right? This is what has happened. So what needs to be done? Both streams of education separately are not able to lift the Muslim Ummah forward. The national education system does not have inputs from your religion or tradition, or does not have Islamic worldview in that national education system. Religious education is limited in scope, no contemporary subjects, disciplines, and most of the time badly managed. Right? There's no system in those schools. Maybe things have improved over the last 3 decades. There have been wonderful examples in Indonesia. I think Bogor is an example that everybody talks about. We also have examples in Malaysia. I'm sure we have examples in Pakistan, in Nigeria, in all the countries that you come. But this needs to be done in a much bigger way. We need to integrate, we need to unite and integrate the two systems. And I think this is what we've been doing, at least in Malaysia, I can say, for the last almost 40 years. There has been an attempt to introduce Islamic orientation in the national schools and to bring modern knowledge into the Islamic schools. But I want to just give a caveat. bringing the Islamic inputs into the national school and bringing the modern subjects into the Islamic school cannot just be addition. It cannot just be an just a kind of a, in addition to your economics, I also teach Sharia separately. It cannot be addition. There has to be integration. So meaning to say, when I teach economics from the Islamic perspective. But that Islamic perspective does not immediately dismiss the modern economics. You need to critically evaluate it. Yeah, so that critical interaction thing is very, very good. Similarly, and this is more sensitive, when you are dealing with the traditional Islamic studies, there may be many things that are also in the traditional Islamic studies that we may need to critically review. But this is more sensitive. When you start saying that, this particular scholar, we need to modify, some people can be very, very emotional. Yeah? How can you say that this scholar is not relevant or this scholar's teaching is not relevant? But if you think about it, that scholar wrote 600 years ago, 500 years ago. He was writing, especially in things related to, say, economics. He was writing for his time, for his context. I'll give one example, because it was mentioned, I think, yesterday, Ibn Khaldun, right? In his Muqaddimah, if you read about what was discussed about the market and about taxes, one of the things is low taxes. He promoted low taxation. Now, by all means, this is one possible thing for you to do today. Low taxes. And there is a certain reason. But are we bound and we say that in whatever context, we must follow Ibn Khaldun's view about low taxes? I wouldn't think so. I think we have to keep in mind that all our great scholars did wonderful jobs and they were really great scholars contributing, but they have a time and space constraint. Right? So we need to understand them. So critical interaction is actually needed on both sides, whether it is the modern disciplines or even in the Torah and Islam. Okay? I leave it at that. This, I think, is something that needs more discussion. We need to maybe bring some of our colleagues who are from that traditional Islamic sciences who maybe have greater interaction with us. Now, in the case of how to unite, you need to Islamize the national education system. And I'm using the IIUM terminology. We need to relevantize the traditional education system. That's the term we use in IIUM. You may or you may not disagree. So, unite the two systems. Therefore, there's only, ideally, one education system. Okay? Good example, IIUM. We call our Kuliah of Economics and Management Sciences. We teach conventional economics, we teach Islamic economics. We teach conventional economics from Islamic perspective. Do we do it well? Okay, there's always room for improvement. Right? Because at the end of the day, how you teach the economics depends on the lecturers. So the lecturers have to be mastering both. Right? Including maybe some of you who will go back and become lecturers in your own universities. What is IOK? Okay, I'm going to go a bit faster for this thing. It is the intellectual dimension of the Islamic resurgence since the 1940s, after World War II, gathering pace probably in the 70s and 80s, and then in the 90s maybe a bit slowing down, and then now starting again. It's part of how I would like to see the IOK agenda. It is part of the reform movement, the reform and renewal movement, yeah, that has been going on in Muslim civilization for centuries. Every century there will be a mujahid, right? Will come. So I look at it as one of the efforts to have Islam theology, especially of the intellectual dimension. Decolonization, de-westernization, indigenization. These are all different terms that are used in scholarship. Right? They may not be talking about Islamization, right? But certainly Professor Al-Attas used the term de-Westernization, because all the disciplines that we have are mainly coming from the West. We are looking at economics, we are looking at politics, we are looking at sociology with the Western lens. Okay? So we need to de-Westernize it. Now, although we have been talking about Islamization or IOK for the last 40 years, there is still much more to learn and to apply to our research agenda. Okay. A critical review of IOK is available. There are so many critics. We don't have time maybe to do that. That's some other time. But how can we apply to our research agenda? Definition: liberation of man from magical, mythological, animistic, national, cultural tradition, and then from secular control over reason and language. The way we think and the way we communicate our ideas, we need to free ourselves from looking at it from that Western lens. This was in 1966 or 67. This definition. It's the deliverance of knowledge from its interpretations based on secular ideology and from meaning and expressions of the secular. So the ideology of secularism is a very central issue that needs to be discussed. Why we are not able to accept this ideology of secularism. It's very important for us to make distinction between secular, secularism, and secularization. We are actually, when you say secular, it usually means here and now. So I could even argue what we are doing now, here, is a secular activity, because we are doing it here and now. And there is no problem actually with what we are doing. But when we say secularism as an ideology, especially as understood by Professor Al-Attas and presented by Professor Al-Attas, secularism as an ideology focuses and says only the here and now is real. If I cannot see it, if I cannot touch it, it's not relevant. So anything that is not in the material world is considered to be irrelevant to the development of science. And that is a major challenge for economics. Right? Because economics deals with human beings. How can we tell the human being, Muslims, that if you cannot see something, it is not important, or it is not relevant for your economics? We believe in the hereafter. Right? That hereafter has got to impact you. But if you're telling somebody the hereafter should not impact you because you cannot see it, it's a problem for us as Muslims. So we need to get out of that Western, way of looking at things. Right? Move. We've already talked about it. Knowledge and disciplines in universities must be taught, researched based on an Islamic worldview. I believe Abbas would have mentioned this in his presentation, Islamic worldview. This has serious implications on how we develop knowledge, our sources of knowledge, our assumptions that we make in building our models and theories, and its ethical implications. So why do we need a philosophy of Islamic economics? Those three areas: the subject matter, what is the subject matter you're dealing with, and then the sources of knowledge that you use, and the methodology, what is called epistemology, and the third is the ethical implications, or axiology. The three areas. Sometimes when you talk about using all these terms, people get worried. What is this epistemology, ontology, axiology? It's actually very simple. It's your body of knowledge, how you develop it, and its ethical implications. That's what it is. So you want to develop Islamic banking finance, but if Islamic banking finance is having negative implications on society, or it's not doing anything to uplift society, then something is wrong, right? I was telling, who was I speaking to? Dr. Irfan. Just 2 days ago, our Prime Minister had a meeting with bankers, central bank and bankers from different banks in Malaysia. And what was the meeting about? He was basically saying something that he actually said, I remember in the late 90s when he was Minister of Finance. He wanted the banks to actually play a bigger role in helping to lift the lower income groups. Okay? And he was telling the banks that you need to enhance your contribution to the humane economy. He's using the term humane economy, or in Malay they say economy manusiawi. Right? You need to show that human element. The banks need to make profits, yes, but please contribute to the upliftment. Now I believe that's where this ethical implication comes in. Right? So he was basically telling the banks, and I think he said something like, at the moment, 5 banks are very, very active. He hopes all the other 20 banks or something will also get on board. That's basically telling the other banks, get on board, right? We want to see greater social financing coming from the banks. And so, I think if all the banks do that, then they are contributing to society, right? And that would be what we want to have. More from a philosophical point of view, IOK is systematic movement from the other than Islamic ontology and epistemology to an Islamic ontology and epistemology that has impact on ethical implications of knowledge. This is a more philosophical way of looking at it, but in simple terms it means you must be able to develop an economics, a banking, all the other disciplines from an Islamic perspective that gives positive benefit to society. And positive here from an Islamic perspective of what is positive. Alright, this is the work plan. I leave you to read it, but I just want to show these are the 12 steps that Al-Marhum Ismail Faruqi talked about. These are the problems. Malays of the Ummah, the problem is in education, and therefore we have to unite the two systems. We have to instill the vision of Islam. Right? How do you do it? One of it is through Islamizing of modern knowledge. And what is this Islamization of modern knowledge? Ismail Faruqi had 12 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And he listed it out like this. Although in the work plan he didn't put it in diagram, but it's 12 steps. Now when you look at the 12 steps, it's very challenging. That's why I said this is not for students. It's not for undergraduate students. Yeah. But it can be for all of you. Okay? Now you need to master modern discipline, but you also need to master Turath al-Islam. To master both. Right? I'm sure all of you are still struggling to master even your topic for your thesis. Right? So, and yet, we have this big master your discipline, master the Torah. So, when you look at it, it's certainly not something for all students. It's those who are interested. It's for the next generation of Islamic economists. You need to know this, you need to do this. Right? Now, what is interesting about the work plan, after the knowledge part, after you have mastery of your economics, you need to also look at society's problems. So your knowledge is not just knowledge for knowledge purpose, but it is knowledge to solve problems. And how do you solve problems? Creative analysis and synthesis. That synthesizing. We use the term integration, but he used the word creative synthesis. Right? The problem with the 12-point plan, it's too difficult for one person. If you see, you have to do all this by yourself. It's very difficult. Some people say the plan is too difficult. Some people say, why don't you focus on the person? Why don't I focus on all of you? Forget about the discipline. If I focus on you, you can then do the discipline. Okay? But then we ask yourself, when I want to focus on you, what do I do? So it has to have a certain plan. You must have a plan for all of you. So among the plan is to organize a training camp like this to introduce you to some of the things that you need to do. We need to have many other programs. We need to introduce all of you to the Torah al-Islam. We need to introduce all of you to different schools of thought in Western economics, as was mentioned yesterday. Right? We need to introduce all of you to methodological issues. Sometimes in economics, we never talk about the different schools of thought. We never talk critically about the assumptions that are made. We just present as it is. So there are many things that we need to do. Even if I say I want to focus on all of you, I want to focus on the Islamizer, what do? I need to have a plan. Right? The sequencing of steps, this is a very big criticism of the work plan. There is too much focus on modern discipline, not enough on the Islamic legacy. So when you focus on the modern discipline, you get caught in the modern discipline. But remember, the idea is not to get caught, the idea is to critically evaluate. Okay, so you need to be able to know modern economics and to be able to critically evaluate without getting caught. Output is not that impressive. I always give this example. Even after almost 45 years, we still don't have a textbook on Islamic economics. Now there are 1 or 2 or 3 available, but 45 years and that's what we have. Not very, very impressive, but we should not be disheartened. And then we don't really put Islamic alternative. This is the criticism of Islamic banking and finance. Yes, we call it Islamic banking finance, but a lot of people are very unhappy. So it's not really something that we can say is Islamic alternative. But what is our option? I think on that, we need to do what the Prophet advised us. You even transmit and convey one eye. Don't wait until you have everything. If you wait until you have everything, you will not do anything. So, whatever little you have, convey it, do it. So that is why, despite the fact that many of us may be critical of Islamic banking finance, we still support the overall idea of having an alternative to the riba-based system. This is our we don't have a choice. But we're always looking for something which is better. Okay, now what happened? And I think this is maybe where, when I ask you who is in the modern knowledge, who is in the traditional, we can actually work in teams. For those of us who are coming from the modern knowledge side, the 12-point plan of Islamic authority, instead of everybody having to go through the entire 12 points, we break it up into 2. Those from the modern discipline, you focus on the modern side. Those from the Quran side, focus on the Quran. Then you work together. You work together to come up with the creative analysis. And I think that's one practical way to resolve. Although it's not that easy. Sometimes trying to work with others is always a challenge. Whether it is between these 2 groups or sometimes even in this group. they cannot agree. Or even in this group, they cannot agree. Right? So the idea of working together is always a challenge. And that is why I think anybody giving advice with to PhD students, they will also tell the PhD student, knowledge is one thing, but you have to get along with your supervisor. Right? If you want your PhD, it's not only how much knowledge you have, but it's also how you interact with your supervisor, your co-supervisor, your examiner, right? If your examiner is coming and giving comments on your thesis, don't shout at him, don't tell him I don't agree with you, right? So you need to be able to communicate with each other. I think that's an important lesson. So it requires a multi-dimensional skill set that you need to also develop as masters and PhD students. We have many cases of students who were sent to do their PhD in UK. First year, no problem. Second year, no problem. Third year, no problem. And then 3 years, you're not back yet. Oh, I have a big problem. I cannot do. Come back. But what were you doing for 3 years? So communication and how you get along with your colleagues and supervisors is very valuable. Okay, this is just a few things that I maybe will end on this note. Maybe a little bit of the end. We want to have critical analysis of both Torah al-Islami as well as modern knowledge. Okay. In IIUM, we use the term relevantization. You don't Islamize works on fiqh and usul fiqh. This would be a very problematic term. To tell colleagues in the Department of Fiqh and Usul Fiqh that we want to Islamize you, problematic. So in IIUM, they use the term relevantization. But relevantization implies critical evaluation. The works of scholars of the past, we need to critically evaluate those works and to see whether or not they are applicable today or we need to make modification and so on. Okay, so in IIUM, they use the term relevantization. As far as modern knowledge is concerned, we talk about Islamization. What is that Islamization? You de-Westernize and then you replace with that Islamic. Okay? Then, when you have these two areas, two inputs, these two inputs will be used to create Islamic economics, Islamic banking, Islamic finance, and this is integrating these two. But I would also argue, based on what Fatih Maldawi said, even this has got integration, even this has got integration. It is a task for academics. How much we take from here, how much we take from here. What do we take from here, what do we take from here? In developing Islamic economics, do we only take from our fiqh tradition? I would think that that would be maybe insufficient. If we only look at the fiqh literature, which unfortunately has been the case maybe for a long time, we also need to look at the literature that is coming from, let's say, the Tasawwuf tradition. Maybe even from the Kalam tradition. Give you a simple example. We talk about freedom to contract, right? The consumer is free. Now, that discussion of freedom, there is a lot of discussion in Kalam. Talking about freedom. Are you free? Do you have free will? Right? So we need to be able to know some of these works that talk about freedom and freedom of human beings in making their decisions. And this would impact. And of course, definitely the ethical implication would mean go to some of the works in the ethics that have been written by our scholars of the past. So, fiqh is important, but maybe we need to look at other aspects as well. And then how to integrate, I think this is the big challenge. I don't have an answer for this. We are still trying to figure out. We need qualified academics. What makes it more confusing? Basically, besides our substantive knowledge, we also have the methodological knowledge. You got the fiqh, you have the usul al-fiqh. You have the economics, you have the usul for economics. Now why I'm saying that, because sometimes, maybe when you want to develop economics, you can't necessarily be happy with just usul al-fiqh. Because usul al-fiqh is mainly talking about the usul to develop the fiqh rulings. And fiqh, unfortunately, has been narrowed to mean law. Everything becomes very legalistic. So in some of the papers that maybe Hafaz and me, we talked about the need for developing an usul for economics, for Islamic economics. I think we call it usul al-iqtisad. We may need to develop an usul for economics, Islamic economics. Okay, now in order to do both, which may be a task for all of you, some of the things that we need to know, and all of you should ask yourself, do you know some of this? For those of us who want to have sufficient mastery of the Torah, we need to understand, for example, ulumul Quran, ulumul hadith. We need to know about Islamic civilization, Islamic science, Islamic philosophy of science, and maybe others. There could be other things. But the basics, ulumul Quran, ulumul hadith. If you are reading the Quran and you are not able to understand the sciences of how to understand the Quran, then it's going to be very, very difficult for you to get anything from the Quran. I remember there used to be somebody, he said, I looked in the Quran many places, I cannot find where it says that this is haram. Because he doesn't understand ulumul Quran. And then, of course, when it comes to the hadith, it is a bit more challenging because we have different narrations by different people, or the categorization of hadith and so on. It's a little bit more complicated. And then to look at Islamic civilization. What did we do? We were talking about the topic on trade, and we were saying that, okay, so during the great time of the Muslim Abbasiyah and Uthmaniyah Caliphate, did they really trade with other Muslims only, or did they trade with non-Muslims? So we need to really look and see the history of Muslim civilization as well. That is why one of the areas that is actually very important in developing economics today, whether it's Islamic or conventional, is history of economic life. Not economic thought, but the actual practices of the Muslims of the past. And one very famous book is this book written by Gautier, The Mediterranean Society. He's a Jewish scholar whose work is probably the most authoritative work, looking at how the Mediterranean society, Muslim society, how they live their life. So it goes back to historical records, the contracts they made, how they traded from Alexandria and Qahira with other city ports. What was in their contract, etc. We don't have this study being done by many people. Economic history is not a subject that we even teach in most economic programs, including ours. But it's a very, very important area, economic history. Not only history of economic thought, but economic history. Yeah, so I think the Tazkirah this morning, Shahadat was mentioned. Very important for us to know the history of this part of the world, if you want to understand Islam and its practice today. Let me move. Implications of IoT on research. What distinguishes the Islamic approach to research is the need to develop knowledge with reference to both revelation and universe. I think yesterday, Dr. Asmi, the focus was on how to utilize the universe observation how you conduct surveys, how you do this is there. Okay? But we also need how to refer to revelation when you develop your research topic or your thesis. Challenge is how to reconcile these sources and how to use various means in a meaningful way. How you refer to Quran, some people may say it's not scientific. Right? Some of the rules of science we may not apply to the Quran because it's a matter of belief. We believe that the Quran is the word of God in verbatim. Right? So the way you treat it cannot be the same as you will treat the Muqaddimah. The Muqaddimah of Ibn Khaldun, you will treat it differently than the Quran. And that is why you need to know the differences, how you should treat it. Alright, I'm going to skip this. Basically, at the end of the day, I just want to mention that when we build our models and theories, at the end of the day, you want to test hypotheses. Right? Sometimes you test hypotheses just by the logic and how you understood a certain Quranic text, whether it is correct or not. You build your model based on your understanding of the revelation applied to your particular context. But you must make sure that you understand it correctly. Right? This is why you don't immediately you build a model, and when you conduct the empirical test, if the empirical test does not support your model, immediately you throw your model out. You have to go back and see, maybe you misinterpreted the Quran, you misinterpreted certain verses, you didn't consider certain things. Right? So you modify your model also. And you see whether the empirical test is the end result. Finally, if you come to the point that you cannot change your model anymore, then you change society. If, to put it briefly, when you do Islamic economics and you come to a point that you cannot change your model anymore because it comes to the level of halal and haram, then your option as an Islamic economist is to put forward policies to change the behavior of human beings. Nothing unscientific about that, because every year in the budget, the national budget is presented every year. That's what the government does, right? Some goods they increase tax, some goods they reduce tax. What is the purpose of increasing the tax? You want people to stop doing it. You reduce tax, you want to give incentive for people to do it. So you are trying to change the behavior of people. In Islamic economics, you want to make sure that, somebody mentioned, you want to live your life as your religion wants you to live your life. So your Islamic economics must be to do that. Okay, now, very common topics, right? People do performance of Islamic banking, vis-a-vis conventional banking, measuring efficiency of Islamic banks in Indonesia, Malaysia. There's so many studies. Effectiveness of zakat in eradicating poverty, many, many studies. Right? Now, many of the topics discuss the state of Islamic economics or state of Islamic banks in Muslim countries. But the framework that is used is the same framework that is used in conventional banks. You are just applying it to Islamic banks. Now, I'm not saying these are not important. I'm just saying maybe we can do something a little bit more. Maybe we need to develop new frameworks to measure Islamic banks. I was speaking to Dr. Irfan, I think in his presentation, he mentioned about adding a social function to the way we evaluate banks. Right? In other words, if you change the way you measure the bank, right, and that change is because of an Islamic input, so according to Dr. Irfan, the social welfare function is representing that Islamic dimension. So now, you are not only looking at the performance of Islamic Bank, but you are having a new measurement to measure the bank. You're not only looking at the criteria that is given in conventional banking and finance, but you are adding ethical or social impact function. So we may need to also develop our own tools as well as benchmarks to measure what is success in Islamic economics, what is success in Islamic finance. Okay, this is what we need to do. It has not been done maybe in the formal courses sufficiently, so we may have to have extra courses, maybe things like this or other programs, where we expose lecturers as well as PG students to the knowledge of history and evolution of your discipline. Need to talk of the discipline's philosophy and methodological development, which is never done. We need to attract serious PG students, take up research in these less commercial areas. So Gafas was maybe, I think, one of the only students who decided to do a thesis in philosophical foundations of Islamic economics. Right? Very difficult to get people to do areas that are not having some kind of commercial selling point. And this is a reality. I'm not blaming anybody. So one of the ways we can do it, we should be giving some kind of financial support to students who are in this area, who would like to do this area, so that they can actually produce something. Need funding for research in these areas. And then we can advertise for specific scholarships, grants, in these areas. And then we need to have a clear, directed research agenda. We cannot just let students come to do PhD, choose whatever area you want. If we want to develop Islamic economics, we need to have a directed research agenda. These are our priority areas. So we would like students in these areas. And of course, I would think PG students are a central factor. Alright, and finally, research projects on critical leaders in Islamic economics. We've actually introduced this in IIIT for lecturers. And I was talking to Prof. Maybe we can also think about opening it up also to some PG students who are interested to do this. And why do I say this is important? All of you, if you have started your PhDs or your master's thesis, the first thing you will be asked to do, I think Dr. Asmi mentioned, search for data, and you can put the databases and you get all the articles that you're going to use as your references, right? When I was doing PhD, unfortunately, we couldn't do anything with the knowledge that we get with that databases or the collection of articles. But today, you've got all these programs that can help you publish a paper in a journal, bibliometric reviews. Right? So if you just Google bibliometric reviews Islamic economics, there are now so many articles. 3/4 of them by Professor Kabir Hassan, who has done so many bibliometric reviews in different areas of economics. Wakaf, microfinance, all kinds of things. But I think he's using the Scopus papers. Our challenge is how to go beyond the Scopus papers. We should also cover non-index journals as well, if you want to know the state of the art. So why don't we get more output in the form of systematic literature review to produce bibliometric reviews as well as review articles. And then, based on these review articles, based on the articles that you think are the best, you collect them to become a book, a critical reader. So again, some of you, if you've been to your library, I do not know whether students actually visit libraries and go to the shelves anymore. But at least in the IIUM library, you have a section there which has readings or critical readers in institutional economics. maybe 5 or 6 volumes of articles plus the review article together in a book form. And there are 5 volumes or 3 volumes. If we can produce critical readers in all the different areas of economics, Islamic economics. So one critical reader on philosophy, maybe more than one. One critical reader on labor economics, Islamic perspective. One critical reader on international trade, although international trade is a tough topic. It's not easy to find even people who write Islamic perspective in international economics. It's quite a challenging area. And many other areas. We could have a series of critical readers. What is it made up of? The best 10 or 15 articles plus your review. Put it together, it becomes a book. Now, if we do this, okay, and for those who are doing the Islamic studies, you produce anthologies of the Quran. The best articles written by our scholars of the past in that area. So I think we have Professor Abdul Aziz Ismail, who used to be in King Abdul Aziz University, now he is retired. Individually, he covered public finance in the 16th century, 17th century, 18th century. And I'm sure he didn't cover everything because it's only one person. He looked at the writings of scholars of the past who wrote on what he calls public finance. And he reviewed them. Yeah, so he has come up with about 3 or 4 publications for this. Just one person. He is a great service to developing Islamic. Okay. If done well, in 1 year, just imagine there are 40 of you here. If all of you assigned to do one critical reader, you will have 40 critical readers after 1 year. That will be great reference work for the future students. Right? Instead of them having to start from zero, they've got now your critical readers. For lecturers who are teaching courses, come up with a critical reader for your course. You know what is being written, and now you use that to teach your course. Okay? So I believe that these are workable things, and we try to devise a system where we bring our graduate students involved, maybe by having some kind of grant scheme as well. We can do that, that would be really wonderful. Now, finally, my favorite quote. I never leave any presentation without this quote. Yeah? After 40 years, where are we? Yeah, and some people will get disheartened. Not going anywhere. No book. No, not much written. So in the early 2000s, I went to Prof. Alatas, and this was maybe 20 years after IOK, 1982, so this was 2000 to 2002. I said, when I go to conference, people are criticizing IOK, but what have you produced? Nothing. Right? So now another 20 years have gone, and this is what he said in early 2000. If we do it correctly, if we do IOK correctly, it will take about 2 generations for us to see the results. Okay? If we do it correctly. So I'm sure he feels we have not done it correctly. Okay? But 2 generations. What is that 2 generations? I don't know how you define. 30 years, 25 years?
40 times 2.
So if we do it correctly, if you take 30 years, you need 60 years. But if you haven't done it correctly, maybe longer than that. Okay, so don't worry that the output is not there. Yeah, go back to the initial part of the presentation. The trend is increasing. So we are starting to produce more. The only thing is we need to have the right orientation to make sure that what we are producing is taking us in the right direction. Alright? We are stop here. Wallahu a'lam. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Prof. Aslam. Very enlightening discussion for us and give us perspective on what are the reasons, why do we need Islamization of knowledge. And then what is Islamization of knowledge? And what are the challenges to do Islamization of knowledge? So all complete picture, I believe you have got all this information from this information. And the next will be a more interactive session with you with the discussions. Before we discuss, what I can sum up from the presentation just now is that if we can make some classification or not classification or stages in the Islamization of knowledge in the history of Islam, there are three phases of Islamization. The first is the Islamization done by the Prophet himself. So when Rasulullah SAW introduced Islam to the people of Makkah and then in Medina, so this is the first Islamization. The mission is introduction of Islam. And then the next phases of Islamization is when Islam has been introduced. And then now Islam will be the civilization. Right? So it is a new civilization that try to challenge the old or the existing civilization in the Rome and in the Persian, and as well as in the other part of the world. So it is Islamization that as a new coming, new emergence of civilization, try to being introduced to the whole world, and interaction of Islamization is being done at that time. So we can try to understand these phases of Islamization by reading the book of one of it is Prof. Syed Nakib Al-Atas' book, Islamization of the Malay world, right? So at the time Islam is trying to be introduced into the Malay world. And then the next phases of Islamization is that we are currently facing, whereby our civilization is now declining, right? And we want to revive our civilizations. So that's why the term used is the malaise of the Ummah, and then the crisis of Muslim Ummah, right? Abdul Habib Abdul Sulaiman. And then Prof. Nakib Al-Atas mentioned it's not only the malaise of the Ummah, as mentioned by Al-Qurubi, but it is also in the West. There is a problem in the West, which is the corruption of knowledge. So we have two problems within ourselves and the West, the challenge from the West, because there is secularization and there is materialization and all these things, ideology that are aliens to us. So it is a kind of revival, a reawakening of Islam and Tajdid. And so this is Islamization that we are going to do at this stage. Okay, brothers and sisters, please, we need some more discussion from you. And what is your opinions on the Islamization of knowledge? Please, I open three. How many pieces will you have?
That's many.
All this, okay, we take three first, and then we'll go there to three. Just before until you be the closing bit after this. Yeah, should be brief and not so many. So that problem can Sister Aisyah, you will pakai. And then who else? Yeah, Nihat and Devi, and then after that the second is Amrin and at the back. Okay.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aisyah Prof. I think this is not a hard question to answer. I just want to try to make sure myself because previously in my vocational high school, I learned about accounting. In my bachelor degree, I learned about financial management, and now I'm in economics, and I just think that I'm confused what I have to go after this. I mean in my PhD. I plan to continue my study in applied economics and management, but since I have something like interesting so much in Islamic economics, I plan to continue also between Islamic economics or Islamic finance and also or maybe in applied economics and management. But one thing I consider is about if I continue my study in applied economics and management, and I still continue my research in Islamic economics, because my research in bachelor degree and also my thesis in economics for my master degree is talking about Islamic economics. And when I asked someone said that just continue your applied economics and management and try to find a gap between conventional economics and also Islamic economics. And after this, when you find the gap between Islamic economics and also conventional economics, it will be a new, something like a new research or maybe something new to get into it. And what do you think about this? Should I continue linear with my economics, or continue with my interest in Islamic economics, or just continue with my applied economics and management, but still I continue my research in Islamic economics as well? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself. Udah tadi ya? Sudah, oke. From IIUM. Okay, next. Mr. Ria.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. My name is Nihat from IIU as well. So my question about IOK is on the Islamic universities that claim to be Islamic by name, but the education and the knowledge that they are offering is quite contrary to Islam. So these places are very lucrative to the youth, especially those who come from minority Muslim. So we're always looking forward to such places because they claim to be, modern, and we want to be part of that society. So for lack of a better word, I will call it a trap. So how can we avoid falling into this trap, coming from places where Muslims are minorities? Since most people might be new Muslims, or they don't really have solid background or solid knowledge in Islam. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Nihat. One more from at the back. Oh yeah, silakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Devi from University of Cakrawala. Prof, I have read an article from a journal that said Islamic economic always follow conventional economic. They are not creative. Islamic economic doesn't have any innovation except zakat, infak, sadaqah. What's your opinion about this? Thank you.
Okay, let me answer. Firstly, to Aisha, how will you have seen the light? You move from accounting to financial management, and you come to economics. Yeah? I always make this joke for people who say they're doing economics now. If you talk about classification of knowledge, certainly economics can be considered to be the kind of mother discipline of maybe management as well as accounting or finance. So the fact that you are doing economics now, I think it's fine, you can do it. Applied economics, there's no problem. Continue with applied economics, whatever interests you. But just make sure that you mentioned about the gap, right? Just make sure that whatever you put forward as an Islamic solution is genuinely an Islamic solution. Because sometimes it may not be. So I go to the third question, maybe. It's connected to the third question. That a lot of what is being presented sometimes, especially in banking finance, I got to be quite clear. The criticism towards Islamic economics sometimes is referring to banking and finance, and not really to economics as a discipline. A lot of criticism to banking finance, but they use the term Islamic economics. Right? We have to just keep making sure that whatever we are doing and developing is genuinely Islamic. So when we talk about Islamization of knowledge, or IOK, creation of knowledge, unfortunately, some of the solutions that have been put forward are not really, really genuine Islamic output. And therefore there is a lot of criticism. So what is our way forward? Well, we have to bring in what we consider to be genuine Islamic alternative. Critics will always be there. Whether you do something good or you do something no good. People who don't agree with your... economics is ideology. At the base of any economics is an ideological foundation. So even in Western economics, the monetarists and Keynesians will never agree on, what policy is best used. So there will be debate. Similarly, when you want to propose Islamic economics, there will be even more people who will be critical of what we are trying to do. Some of their criticism we need to take because they will help us improve. But you also have to keep in mind that some of the criticism is done with bad intention. Right? And there are quite a number of people who just want to dismiss any possibility that you can refer to religion as a source of guidance. We have many critics like that within, not within, but who have been criticizing Islamic economics. I'm not sure who you are referring to, but in our PhD class, we always start with a few articles written by probably the biggest critic of Islamic economics by the name of Timur Quran. Basically, he has said that Islamic economics is just a waste of time. It's just pious, khutbah, giving khutbah. But I think he is outdated. I think if you really look at what we are doing in the last 15, 20 years, I think there's a lot of good work that has been done. We have certain areas that we may need to improve. So I think the challenge is how to present genuine Islamic alternative. Because unfortunately, as mentioned yesterday, the banking and finance alternative has been criticized very heavily. Come up with better alternatives. And I think we are moving. Looking at the discourse on sustainable development goals, although we may have reservation of SDG also, but this idea that we need to look beyond just GDP or beyond the economic factor, we have to look at the human being. I think this is in line with Islam. So we can actually use some of the arguments that are being utilized by those people promoting SDG to also develop Islamic economics. Yeah, so we shouldn't be disheartened, but just follow, what we need to do. The model is critical evaluation of both sides, critical evaluation and then try to. Finally, to Nihad, I'm trying to figure out exactly. You're saying basically there's a kind of a lot of hopes are given, and then you find that it doesn't meet your expectation. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. In all the programs that I have attended and sometimes been involved in, the big problem in, at least in Islamic economics and finance, lack of human resource and lack of teaching materials. So there is not much return from Islamic point of view. And secondly, the people who are supposedly teaching that Islamic perspective is not also the best qualified. We have conducted so many workshops in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in southern Thailand. They all say the same challenge. They don't have enough people and they don't have enough reference material. So that is why my proposal here is we need to increase the reference materials. Hence, the critical readers, the critical reviews, the bibliometric reviews, this is what we need to do. And once we have those materials coming out, hopefully, your next generation is better than the current generation, right? So how to resolve this sometimes wrong impression given that they have all the answers to your problems. Yeah, I do. How to resolve that is a challenge. It's everywhere. Even in IIUM, we receive that criticism also. That sometimes we claim to be the National Islamic University, but the output is not giving everything that the student wants. Why? Human resource issues, reference. So, what is the solution? I don't know how to give you the answer, except that you need to probably do much more homework to make sure that whatever is being promoted or being told is something that is really able to be done. I don't know whether I've answered your dilemma, but I can understand. Sometimes it's also the other way around. Sometimes many Muslims, they go to the West thinking that they're going to get first-class education. Then they go and they find that it's also not first-class. So there are challenges. Okay, next.
I have one comment that when I listened to Prof. Hassan Malkawi's lectures on IOK, he very nicely mentioned that we need integration at two levels, vertical integration and horizontal integration. One is the integration of the Islamic worldview with the human acquired knowledge, and the second is the cross-disciplinary, multidisciplinary integration. This gives me a better understanding of integration rather than taking the modern knowledge from the West and then Islamize it or integrate the Islamic worldview. Because as a human, our acquired knowledge is depending on different sources of, is it sense perception we are looking at, observation, or then if we integrate our Islamic worldview with the human acquired knowledge, it becomes Islamic knowledge rather than putting it in a way that we take the knowledge from the West and then Islamize it. Yeah, I agree that Islamic civilization benefited from the other civilizations, but I don't think that they accepted those things that were contrary to their Islam worldview. For example, Islamic banking is totally contrary to the view where capital owner is given the privilege. And Islamic banking is almost 67.7% of the global Islamic financial industry. So sometimes when we criticize Islamic banking, the response is very apologetic that we are living in a globalized, integrated world, so we cannot go against the dominant, how can in a globally integrated world we just go against the flow. We have to go with the flow until we find a solution. So in this regard, you mentioned that few of the steps the Islamic economists and the Sharia guys should come together and do something. We have seen that the outcome of this kind of collaboration is Sharia compliancy. We need to go beyond Sharia compliancy, just like only halal is not enough. We need to go to tayyib. So Sharia compliancy is giving us the same output of income inequality, the same prices. So I think, what would you suggest, that we go with the same integration of modern scholar, Western knowledge scholars, and share? What is the solution so that in the future we go beyond Sharia compliancy?
I just want to, I agree fully with what was said about this vertical integration. And that is actually what we mean by Islamization. When we look at modern economics, we are evaluating it from the Islamic worldview. To put it very simple, that is what Islamization is. And you are developing that body of knowledge as you move along. whether or not you can use existing knowledge or tools that have already come from the existing knowledge into an Islamic system. About foreign Muslim civilization coming across, they did not accept. I agree fully. So if there's anything in modern economics or in modern sociology, modern finance that we cannot accept, we shouldn't accept it. But if there's something that we can modify, we can modify. Things were modified as well. So I think the issue is, and whether or not you can, the second part about whether or not you should work within the system or try to create an alternative, do both. I don't see a problem. My only thing is, if you immediately want to exclude yourself out of the system, that may not take you to where you want to go. So have both. Just like in our discussion of who is going to develop that contemporary body. Is it more the modern knowledge scholars or the Islamic scholars, traditional scholars? Both can work towards it. Have both sides move, and the more they interact, the better will be the ability to come up with what we want. Even once we are able to do that, I'm sure there will still be improvements that can be made. So I'm all for as many different approaches as people want to make. My only central issue is critical interaction. So in the case of Fatim Al-Kawi, it is evaluating based on Islamic worldview. I agree fully with that. We should do that.
Please, another question from that side, and another one, two, and Dr. Misbah as well. Three. Yeah, please.
Yes, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In Java, I know the concept from university that have the concept IIUM. Win Malang, the tree of knowledge in Win Malang, Quran as the root, and science such as biology, as live, and integration and interconnection, the theory of scientific work by Amin Abdullah from Win Sunaka Jakarta. But from my opinion, these two university do not have any effect in their student, just in affecting scientists. So therefore, perhaps as learning, that we need information about what is your biggest challenge and this experience in carrying about this vision, and how the concept relates about Islamic economic, how the concept of EOK relate to school of thought in Islamic economic, like Bakar's father, Ibn Soduna, and Abdul Manan mainstream. Thank you.
Let me just answer this. I think when you want to talk about developing the next generation of Islamic economics, there has to be also support from various stakeholders. I can give the Malaysian example. I'm sure even in Indonesia it is happening. For example, if you want to make any Islamic reform successful, it requires political will. When I say political will, I don't mean necessarily the government, but you mentioned UIN, or you mentioned maybe Muhammadiyah University. There must be political will from these institutions to produce the kind of graduates that they want to produce, and who will go into society and make impact. So there must be that political will. Then you need the people. Right? So I would again argue, if you say that the students are not really, they're not making impact on students, then you have to look at the people. Maybe the issue is what our sister was raising, a human resource problem. Yeah, the students are not convinced that this is really an Islamic alternative. So human resource got to be trained. And therefore there is a need for the Ministry of Higher Education or even the Ministry of Agama to actually start talking about training the lecturers, you know, in this idea of, in our case, IOK. Have proper training to create people who are able to give that impact. Right? And of course the reference material. And finally at the masses level, you need to have also acceptance from society, right, about what you want to produce. I was informed many years ago that the demand for Islamic economics and finance graduates is very high. Is that still the case? So if there is a great demand for Islamic economics and finance graduate in Indonesia, there should actually be, you know, there should be an incentive for the universities to actually offer this kind of program. So political will, and then you need the people, and then you need the masses to support. I mean, that is the three. If it is not happening, you need to look and see what is it that, where is the problem? There could be some place where there is a problem.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor, we have difficulties for how to understand the Qurans because of the weaknesses in Arabic. So this is faced by many universities, UIN, because UIN not all are using the Arabic, only for facultas adab in one department, in facultas tarbiyah perhaps, and in the Usuluddin. Many of the graduates are unable to speak or even to write in very well. So to face this problem, I would like to suggest maybe IIT Indonesia to have branches in UIN first, to have the agenda for IOP, and perhaps also you may have the experience before, maybe in other universities rather than International Islamic University Malaysia, so that we can have the experience on that. Otherwise, we are not mastering English in very well, not even the Arabic. So how to solve it? Thank you.
Very, very, I think, important point. I just want to bring something that Professor Alatas once mentioned to us. When this issue about Arabic was raised, he made a distinction between understanding Arabic in terms of talking or writing and Arabic in terms of understanding the concept and what the concept means relating to the Islamic worldview. There could be two different things here. He emphasized a lot on understanding the Quranic concept or the Arabic concept in relation to the Islamic worldview. Right? And that is why when you speak to Professor Alatas, he may not speak Arabic, but in terms of his understanding of that concept from Islamic worldview point of view is very deep. Right? So maybe what needs to be stressed is this aspect. So if you read Professor Alatas, although he writes in English or in Malay, when he explained the concept that is in the Quran or that is in the, well, usually it's the Quran. He doesn't go to the modern Arabic language, right? So he will explain the concept in so great detail. So when you want to teach Arabic, especially to the academics, maybe that is the way to go about trying to teach Arabic. By all means, continue with improving the Arabic of communication and understanding and reading, but focus on this understanding the concept. I think this may be something which not only in Indonesia but I think everywhere we should be doing that, so that we understand the meaning of that concept. what he called the Islamic language, right? Whether it is in Malay, whether I don't know what Indonesian language, but certainly Malay, in Swahili, in Urdu, whatever Muslim society you are in, and they have a language that they use, there will be these concepts that have a fundamental worldview of Islam. So that could be a way to do it. And you can explain that in English, you can explain that in Indonesian, right? So I'm just giving you, I mean, don't think that you have to have perfect Arabic immediately. This will take time. But in the meantime, do good translation, right? So the people who can translate the Arabic Quranic concepts well into Malay or English, maybe that should also be given, stress. About the IIT opening, that one maybe Dr. Ahmad Lubis need to answer. To open up, to have programs with UIN and so on in order to promote IOK and also the Arabic language and so on.
Thanks, Professor Aslam. First thing I'd like to comment our brother's requirements. Asking for conducting events in WIN. Actually, we are right now working on how to develop the Indonesian activities. Maybe one of them can be adopted to be one program, because we have a program up to the end of this month, depending up to the end of this year, depending matters that have been promised to several areas. Maybe inshallah the program like IOK, the general package like IOK courses are epistemology and then Quranic use and also Islamic worldview. I think maybe we can really do it more, many times in a year, probably like 4 or 5 times in this program. Maybe one of them, maybe we can include them. I would like to read the Surah Al-Hadid. Surah Al-Hadid, just in English. Surah Al-Hadid, ayat 25. This is about the ayat. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We have already sent our messengers with clear evidences and sent down the scriptures and guarantees that the people may maintain their oppressed injustice. And we sent down ayah where is a great victory of mind and benefits for the people, and so that Allah may make evident those who support and his messengers unseen. Indeed, Allah is powerful and extraordinary. Through another form of this ayah, Allah sent the ayah, and then from the ayah you can make the living mind and benefits. So it means a lot of activities from taking the iron from the ground through the mining technology, and then from that we through metallurgical process to separate this iron from the other materials, and then making raw materials for the industries to make 90% of 99% iron, and then from that we try to make alloy technology, mixing with the other elements to be alloy materials, and then we can use it for different application, and then we use it for making cars, making bridges, and everything else. And then after that, we have to really there are ways of that, and then we have to pay attention to technology. This is just an idea, but this is an example how the other materials, how the plantation, forest, and everything else. So this is the kind of economic activities. Seems to me not just from single elements, single knowledge. Right now, there's a trans-multidisciplinary approach. I think we have to really explore this understanding. Islamic economies, I see, from my reading, because Professor Rolo asked me to give the tasmira, but I think I will like to convey in this gathering, in this meeting, that Islamic economies try to really make the Islamic become wisdom-based. So this ayat really, represents the current situation. Knowledge-based economies, and then through the Islamic approach, the IOP approach, positive approach, become wisdom-based model. Yeah, I'd like to have you, really elaborate a little bit here through this IOP approach. Seems to me IOP principle cannot stand by itself. This could combine with the positive understanding, the epistemological understanding, Quranic use, Islam would be like what Sister mentions before. I think this is the way the methodology need to be developed for the future, especially for many people, many students who don't have as much background in religious studies. Like for us, we are not coming from Bontor, for example. We are coming from a special, normal school, but during our lifetime, when we are kids, we are sent also to madrasah, close to our house, but not really comprehensive in Bontor and some other subjects. I'd like to have your comments to make it. IOP is not something. Try to make it easy, simple approach, to make everybody really not feel burdened on this. I think this is important.
Yeah, okay, Prof. Please, Prof. Your last comments, and after that we'll close this session.
Thank you very much, Lubis. I think I agree fully. One of maybe the big challenges of IOK movement has been that it has been seen as a relatively elitist project meant for professors and so on. It hasn't gone down to not only to the students but also more to the masses. It has not reached. And so I will agree that we need to figure out how we can present the IOK agenda in a way that it can attract maybe professionals who are in the workplace, undergraduate students, maybe even to a certain extent try to go to the school system. There has been some discussion about focusing on schools. So yeah, I would think that what you mentioned about wisdom being the way forward, I think that would be a good guiding principle. How we do it, I think this is a challenge. I know that IIIT in the US, they have actually decided to focus a lot on school education. So maybe this is one of the things that they're trying to do, to present the IOK agenda in the form of education at the school level. And this could be one of the ways to make it more accessible to more people. But I believe even at the university level, it needs to continue together so that everybody will be able to play a role. I agree with your comment.
Your Prof, any closing statement? No? Okay, then, Alhamdulillah, we have reached the end of this session with Prof. Muhammad Aslam Hanif. I believe you have a lot of ideas that need to be incorporated, especially to your presentation proposal later on. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much again, Prof. We'll have a break, coffee break. But before that, we have announcement from Prof. Norman. Please, Prof. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. According to the schedule, the next session will be your presentation, right? Presentation of research proposal. But we, after discussion with Dr. Hafaz or future Prof. Hafaz, so I think we are scrapping that. I mean, not scrapping that session. We delay that session so that we can replace it with discussion on research proposal. So among yourself, because we think that we have not done justice to you all. We are kind of rushing you all to present because there's no, let's say, formal time that is given for you all to actually work on the proposal. So maybe after listening to Prof. Aslam on the importance of the Islamization of knowledge, so most probably you all want to incorporate some of the elements that you have obtained from Prof. Aslam's presentation. So we are postponing the session to after lunch and after Zuhur prayer, so which will start at 2:20. Yeah, 2:20. So until 4. I think we can finish it before that because we have 10 groups altogether. So the maximum time given is 15 minutes. Don't go beyond 15 minutes. Yeah. So judges will be appointed to evaluate your presentation. Yeah. So 3 judges will judge or will evaluate or will assess your proposal, and then maybe let's say I would like to maybe tell the criteria or announce the criteria that you will be judged on. Perhaps maybe on the novelty of your research, yeah, on the creativity, on the innovativeness of your research proposal, and then you will be judged also on the style of your presentation, yeah. So like style is very important. You have listened to Dr. Riyasat yesterday, yeah, on the delivery, yeah. The delivery is also important. The words that you use, yeah, the choice of words is very important. How you convey the message. So that also will be assessed, and also in terms, of course, in terms of the content, yeah, we'll also be looking at your PowerPoint, your presentation aid, basically. That will also have some points, yeah. If we really like your presentation, we will give you bonus, yeah. So let's say we have 3 categories, so we'll have the style, the content, and the presentation aid. So each category will have a maximum of 10 points. But if we really like your presentation, we can give more than 10 points. Yeah. So do your best. Yeah. Do your best. And I would like to also announce that there will be cash awards. Yeah, cash awards for the top 3 winners. Okay. Right. So that is why we are giving you extra time so that you can do your best. Okay. So make full use of this time, and so we are really looking forward for a quality presentations. Yeah. So this afternoon, inshallah. Okay. So that's all from me, Dr. Hafaz. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So now we can have break, coffee break. Yeah, coffee break. Lunch is not ready yet, so it's still early. So we'll have coffee break.